Today's video, it's about using punctuation in dialogue. You see the little blinking eyes? Those represent quotation marks. Quotation marks are very important when you are writing dialogue. Speech marks or quotation marks go around the direct quotes or exactly what is being said by your characters. So as you're writing your fable, consider what are the things your characters will say to each other. So what kind of conversations will they have and what will they say in their conversations? And this is the dialogue. Conversation between two characters. Now let's look at Blab and Blob. Here we have Blob speaking to Blab. Hello, Blab. Hello, Blob. What a surprise seeing you here. Now these are direct quotes, exactly what each character is saying, but it's not punctuated correctly. If I want to punctuate correctly what Blab and Blob are saying to each other, there are rules, and we must follow those rules when using dialogue in writing. Let's look closely. Whenever you are going to write two characters speaking to one another, you must use quotation marks around what they say. The rule is to begin with the quotation mark. The very first word must be capitalized. You should also use quotation marks to close exactly what they are saying. So please notice quotation marks in front and behind the words of Blob. But most importantly, you must include end punctuation. The end punctuation will always come before the closing quotation marks. You must have end punctuation after you explain how the character has spoken. Exclaimed Blob. Blob is the character. How has he spoken? He exclaimed. So, how does Blab respond? He responds, hello, Bob. So when he responds, hello, Blob, because a new character is speaking, we must be sure that we begin with new quotation marks. Also, quotation marks to close and end punctuation. End punctuation also after you explain how Blab responded. But once you have said which character is speaking, you do not have to repeat that. So Blab is still talking when he says, what a surprise seeing you here. However, I must apply the same rules. I must use quotation marks in front of the first word with a capital letter, punctuation again, and the punctuation comes before the closing quotation marks. Let's look at some more examples. Do you believe it? Charlie asked. Again, my quotation marks come before the very first word that Charlie has said. I have a capital D and I have a punctuation because do you believe it is a question. So therefore I use the appropriate or correct end punctuation, which comes before the quotation marks. I also must put another end mark at the end of Charlie asked. Let's look at another example. I don't believe it. Well, quotation marks in front of the statement that Kate has said, closing quotation marks, and before that, my end punctuation. How did Kate say, I don't believe it? Was she happy, sad? Well, she cried. And I need end punctuation. Here's an example of where I explain how the reader has spoken. but I interrupt what they've said with the explanation. So the rules are a little different. Believe it or not, quotation marks, I must use a comma. The comma separates the speaker and how the speaker has spoken. But I must use quotation marks at the end and at the beginning of the interrupted statement. I also must have an end punctuation mark for the quotation marks. Now, let's do a few by yourself. Would you like a sweet? Tom asked. How would you punctuate this? Remember, would is the very first word, so it must be capital. Where would your quotation marks go? And what end punctuation would you use? I hope you got this correct. If not, let's try another. I love to come to your party, Sam exclaimed. We will put the quotation marks before I'd, quotation marks at the end, and the use of an exclamation point. Don't forget, but it's already been done for you, that end punctuation after you explain who has spoken and how they have spoken. Just another example. That was a really sad story. Again, look at where the quotation marks have been placed, my end punctuation. And lastly, if you like it, Alice mumbled, have it. Here we have an example of the speaker and how you've been spoken to interrupts. Now, prepare to try a few or a paragraph on your own. Now, you're going to try punctuating this dialogue. Please write this entire paragraph on your notes page. You are going to punctuate the dialogue in this paragraph. Be prepared to turn this in and share your answers in class on tomorrow. You will receive a grade for this. Please pause the video so that you may write your answers, write the paragraph and the dialogue punctuation as you have been shown in the other slides. Please press pause. Remember, when punctuating dialogue, put quotation marks or speech marks around the words that are being said by the character. Punctuate before and after the statement. Have end punctuation in both places, after the direct quotation or exact words that are being said, and at the end, after you have explained who has spoken and how they've spoken. Please bring your notes to class on tomorrow. You will use them to complete an activity, and I will also be looking for your paragraph that you completed. See you then.